How do you remember those 40 years now?
Well, having written a book, of course.
Right. And yeah, how do you remember those years? Which
to tell you the truth, I had, and I think as the book opens up, actually, that I had what turns out to be an unnecessary operation on my arm, and which left quite a remarkable scar here. And
so it's still there.
Yeah. So I was told, like after the operation, then perhaps I shouldn't play for about a year or something. So my mother, when she was alive, I remember that she kept all the scrapbooks right from when I was a very small boy. She had everything really in chronological order. You know, all the cuttings from newspapers, all the programs.
Programs of your concerts or your
the programs of my school reports.
And some of your photos from early days.
Oh yeah. She was. She collected quite a lot of this stuff, and it was all up in the loft. You know, do you call it loft in Japan?
Yes.
The upper bit where you store things. You know. So there was just piles of this stuff, and I was quite amazed, and I thought, well, there is a book here, you know, and if I don't write it, somebody else will, and they'll probably get it all wrong, you know. At least I've got all the facts here, so I can word it, and you know, I realizing that possibly I might not actually play again. I thought, well, I'm just not going to sit around doing nothing. This is the opportunity for me to, you know, write about my life, and so I chose to do it in a humorous style. Whether it works when it's in the translation, I can't be too sure, but I suppose I'm assured by Mari-chan that apparently it is kind of funny, but I don't think she finds it all funny, because it does deal with a lot of infidelities which I went through when I was you know, a lot younger. And so it's not an easy thing for women to deal with, you know. Oh, you did that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you remember those events in your life very well, very big.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a few spaces in that, you know, and but I'd phone up my friends, or I'd phone up journalists, which I was very friendly with. I said, "Do you remember coming on that that particular concert when we came to Japan? You know, in 1972, we played the Karakuren Stadium. What was your, you know?" And I'd ask the journalist, you know, what were your feelings about that? And he said, "Oh, God, don't you remember we did this and we did that and that."
So you did
research,
you know. Yeah, before.
Yes, I did a lot of research.
And they helped you get the information.
Yes.
I see.
Not only that, but I called up various band members which I'd worked with, and asked them to write their own account of really what they thought about me. I said, you know, be as free as you want. I said, I will not edit it. You know, if you want to say I'm a complete arsehole. I was quite surprised. I don't think anybody really came back with anything really bad, which Well, actually, they did. There were quite a few sort of really bad journalists' reports, and I kept those in the book. And when I first published it, a lot of people read this. I don't think you should put that in the book. You know, I think you're putting yourself down too much. I said no. It's not going to be realistic unless unless you put this in. You know.
Yeah, I think you are very honest in writing your book. Yeah.
Well, I think you have to be.
Right.
I read an awful lot, and I'm very much inspired by writers far better than me. Writers like Clive James, Bill Bryson, Terry Pratchett, and some classics. Mark Twain has a very unique sense of humour, which I think basically other former American guys like Bill Bryson, I'm sure Mark Twain was a huge influence. But Clive James, who's an Australian, his books are just absolutely hilarious.
Which book in particular?
Yes. Well, Clive James, Unreliable Memoirs. I like the title. It shows a degree of honesty, because he's basically inferring that he doesn't quite remember all about his life story, and it is his life story, and it's very, very funny. And I thought, well, if I write an autobiography, it can't be like I did this and then I did that, and then I won this award, or then I won that award. It can't be like that. It's so a lot of the exploits I got up to. I think I wrote it in quite a funny style, actually.
Well, this is a kind of different question, but you were originally very much influenced by jazz and classical music.
Yes.
And then your music, which was influenced by jazz and classical music, is now in turn influencing younger generations. Younger generations of jazz music and classical music as well.
Yes.
What do you think about it?
Well, it's an amazing surprise, when I've been fortunate enough to have met a lot of unbelievable jazz players, which. And I always find it really amazing, like people like Herbie Hancock, who I've met. Sometimes it has happened. I've gone up to some musician who's just played, quite popular. I said, hi, I don't know if you've heard of me, but my name's Keith Emerson. Other times, though, like great guitar player Kevin Eubanks, he's a great jazz guitarist, and I sort of approached him very reluctantly, and it was like, wow, and he called his whole band over, guess who this is again? And no, and the Kevin's drummer came up to me and he just gave me a hug and he's almost crying, it's like, really, wow, it's like, I didn't expect that, and so I came back the next week, and he said, "Are you going to come next week?" I said, "Yeah, I'll come to the club." It's a club in Los Angeles called the Baked Potato. And he said, "We'll have a surprise for you." And, okay. So I got there, and he started. He's a very subtle guitar player, doodling around. He. What was he? He played Trilogy, I think. Yeah. The way he started playing it was all improvisational. But then suddenly he just got into the actual song in his own way as an instrumental. And it was really quite amazing. Yeah.
Right.
So I get surprises like that sometimes.
Right. So your music influenced so many people already, and some of them include, for example, people like Jordan Rudess of Dream Theater.
Oh, yeah.
Who is playing percussion.
Oh, he's a
and many
brilliant.
other
He's
things.
well, he's just a
Right.
brilliant musician.
That's right. And some of the new genres are coming up, like well, it's not already new, but things like prog metal. That's a kind of mixture of prog rock,
Yes.
heavy metal.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you really influenced so many new kinds of music.
Well, it has come to my attention,
Mm-hmm.
but with the new generation of players, I normally say to them, don't just listen to me, listen to who I listen to. And then you'll learn a bit more, because all the greats which I listen to, say for instance Andre Previn, when he was playing jazz, before he got into the classical conducting, he's a great jazz player, and I remember buying an album, and on the sleeve notes, on the liner notes, he mentioned who he listened to, like Bud Powell and another musician called Hampton Hawes. And I made a note of that. I thought, wow, I've got to listen to what Andre Previn listened to, which I did, and I could see exactly how Andre Previn got his style. So that's my recommendation to anybody else. Is like, don't listen to me. Listen to who I listen to as well. Then it'll be more inspirational.
That's right. Well, I don't know that's more, but still, maybe the way you mixed different kinds of music was so good, probably, to the younger generation, I think. And maybe that's why so many people would like to listen to you.
Yes.
I
Well,
guess, yeah.
it really is. I think progressive music,
Mhm.
which it's now termed that way, is
Mhm.
to be a progressive player, you have to really have a knowledge of pretty much all types of music. And in the experimental days of the 60s and the 70s, one could, I utilised bagpipes. But of course, the Beatles were the first to use like sitars, from George Harrison and that.
Right.
And I think that gave everybody else the confidence to say, well, let's mix it all up, Let's put a bit of jazz in here, let's put a bit of classical music in here, So basically, I mean, the Beatles were the first progressive rock band, really, when you look at it. And because of their success, it gave, I came just after the Beatles, actually, but I was very much inspired, I suppose, not by their music, but, I thought if the Beatles can use a sitar, then I can use bagpipes. Or take it to a complete extreme, an instrument which I found in Tunisia, called a zoukra.
You talked about it in the autobiography.
Yeah, it's a very tough instrument to play. It's a double-reeded instrument, and you need to have the lungs as if you're going to attempt to blow up a truck tire.
And that was used in a song in one of your albums, I think. Well, that's Enigma.
Yes, it was.
At the beginning?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, in the intro.
Right. Well, how would you predict about the rock music of next generation? What will become of rock music in the next, 10 years or 20 years?
That's a very tricky question. I suppose with all groundbreaking music, like the sort of things that I was doing with the Nice and with Emerson, Lake and Palmer at the very beginning, people said, "What is that?" But it's now it's acceptable to the point that you get examples like Yoshimatsu arranging Tarkus, being played by one of the world's greatest orchestras, and you can't ask much more than that. I think that the standard of musicianship is really so much improved, and of course the members in the orchestra are they're very young, and they're most eager to do it. And I think when, say, a child or growing up and sees somebody that is really not that old, almost just slightly older than themselves, and sees what they're doing, then I think that encourages that child go, wow, I want to learn to play an instrument. It's encouraging, And the other thing, of course, is that, well, I suppose if you don't go out to a concert, you don't really get the opportunity to hear a new sort of music. Many times when ELP were touring, I would go out and sort of meet the audience, and maybe father would bring his son or daughter along and say to me, like that, I really enjoyed it. I've never heard music like that before. Why don't they play your music on the radio more often? Now I listen. My father got me to listen to all your records, but he said I would never have heard it. So, in answer to your question, I think, if anything, I pointed the way forward, that everything is possible. I think possibly the next music is going to be a lot more eclectic, and really incorporating all sorts of music from all different cultures, all different nationalities. Eastern music, Japanese music. It's I think that will definitely be the way forward. A lot of musicians. Take Paul Simon, for instance, who went to Africa and worked with traditional African musicians, and that record was a huge hit. So I think the future really would be get out, find some remote area and take your recorder with you, and get influenced from that way, but make it your own. And incorporate, if you want to incorporate it into a jazz style, that's fine. Use different instrumentations, different instruments. And just have fun. People want to hear something which they've never heard before. We could all turn the radio on and listen to perhaps to Lady Gaga or whatever. But that stuff gets rammed down your neck. I know in England it's pretty. It's quite safe, the music, when you put the BBC radio on. It's quite safe music. It's all, they pretty much play the same program all the time. I'm not that familiar with Japanese radio, so I would imagine that they're quite. You've probably got a jazz station. I would most likely think you've got a classical station and a country station. It's the same in America. In America, if you turn on the jazz radio station, they actually do play jazz. In England, if you turn on the jazz radio station, you're very lucky if you hear it. Their concept of jazz is completely weird. It's almost like pop music.
It's kind of very conservative.
Well, it's not conservative. It's just sort of like I don't know. I'm just trying to think of some soul singers that they think that's jazz. It's not. It's
right, so
Marvin Gaye, for instance, would probably be played on the jazz radio station in England.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's how
surprising.
That's how really, because they're nervous about You know, we can't play Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk. People are going to switch it off. No, they don't these days. You know, and I think the thing is with radio, they've got to take more risks, because otherwise, you know, the listeners aren't going to hear anything else unless they go out, as a father takes his son and his daughter out to a concert. You know.
So the meaning of the genres like jazz or soul music, you know, is very different according to the countries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do find singers like today, like resurrecting soul music, or even the classical, the jazz standards. You know, I mean, guys like Rod Stewart, for instance. You know, who you know, and they've done very well at resurrecting some of the jazz classics, but in that traditional manner, really. It's almost like they're trying to say, well, yes, I've done the rock thing, but just to show you that I really can sing, I'm going to sing an Ella Fitzgerald song or a Billie Holiday thing, you know.
Is he singing that?
Well, I think so, yes.
Really?
Yes. I must confess, though, you know, having said that, you know, back in the early days when I played some classical pieces, I think it was to sort of prove that I could actually play classical pieces, you know.
Right.
So it was a bit of like, you know, no, I don't play rock and roll, but I can play a little bit of Bach, you know. You know. So yeah, I think it's in all sorts of musicians. You know, it's like well, you know, if you're really that keen on staying in the ball game, you permanently have to keep trying to prove yourself. You know.
Right.
Do I think?
Yeah. Do you think the boundaries between styles and genres have been kind of blurred and broken?
To it. Of course, there are some great new players which are breaking the tradition, so that they cross over.
Right.
So therefore, you get like jazz fusion. You know, you get rock fusion. A lot of my contemporaries, like Genesis and Yes, who started off being very experimental, successfully made that crossover from being progressive rock to radio playable material and having hits, you know. Well, bands even like ELP, we tried to make that crossover from progressive music to.
Right. Yeah, you were talking about the 80s.
Yes.
Especially.
Well, yeah, late 70s. I mean, well, our first attempt, really, ELP's first attempt at making a crossover and getting radio playable material was the album Love Beach.
I see. Yes. Yeah.
And a lot of our fans were horrified, you know, but I think they were mainly horrified by the album cover.
Oh, with a lot of skin.
Oh yes, it's all oiled up and looking like the Bee Gees, you know. But actually, I think if you listen to the album now, it's not that bad. And I think really if ELP had stuck to it, and we'd have lost a whole load of people, but we would have gained possibly a lot more. But I just couldn't do that, you know. Carl went on to do it very successfully with Asia, and you know.
Right.
So, but you know, they made it. You know, I mean, Carl persisted, but of course, he had the opportunity in getting with you know, guys which were from the progressive era, but calling themselves something completely. They actually formed another band, so it wasn't like you know, a rehash of. ELP or Yes or, you know, Genesis, you know, it was they had the opportunity of making a complete fresh start, but I think it was too much of a shock for ELP to try and do that, you know. Genesis did very successful at it,
Right.
mainly because all of the players are so brilliant in their own individual rights. Guys like Phil Collins and Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks, isn't it, the keyboard player? I think. They were, and of course, Yes, were very successful with that. But no, it didn't make any. I didn't feel comfortable with it.
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah. But still, I'm kind of very impressed that you're challenging in so many different styles throughout your career. Like you also did film music, and
Yeah.
you wrote music for animation, and also you
Yes.
did music for Godzilla.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
great.
Yeah, I did Armageddon,
Sure.
Godzilla, yes.
Godzilla, Armageddon.
I think there was another one actually. And quite a few horror films in Italy,
Right.
and two major ones in Hollywood was, the Sylvester Stallone film Nighthawks.
Nighthawks.
I did the whole score on that.
Right.
The big screen, but I think it's on video, called Best Revenge. Yeah, it's
Right.
quite fun.
Yeah. And this time, you were in the audience of the Yoshimatsu concert yesterday.
Yes, yes.
And you listened to the orchestrated version of your Tarkas.
Yes.
Right. How did you like it?
I did just overwhelmingly brilliant, really. When I composed Tarkus in 1971, I always had in the back of my mind that I would hope that someday an orchestra would do it,
So from the beginning of your composition, you already had that idea of making it orchestrated.
Yes,
Yeah.
back in 1971, I only had I had a Hammond organ and piano, and of course the Moog synthesizer.
Right.
In the back of my mind, though, that those sounds sounded orchestral to me. But I'd had bad experiences with orchestras when I started working with them in the 60s, and I was very friendly with Frank Zappa, and he was very frustrated with orchestras then. Because number one, they didn't. His music was very complicated especially for English orchestras, and of course some of Frank Zappa's lyrics weren't very much to the conservative liking. It's kind of when you've got titles like "Why Does It Hurt When I Pee," it's no wonder you've got an orchestra wanting to get up and walk out. So I was quite used to that back in the 60s of when working with an orchestra, that you could expect some of them to play with cotton wool in their ears, and a lot of them would just get up and sometimes just walk out. I'm very lucky now that it's wonderful now that orchestras are so desperate for new compositions, and they welcome the challenge. So, my recent experience of recording the Three Fates project in Munich was quite encouraging, actually. While I was there in Munich recording, I happened to say on a radio show that at the very beginning of our recording session, I was on a radio show, and I happened to say that I'd be very surprised if the orchestra is still here at the end of the week. But, towards the end of the week, there was a break in recording with the orchestra, and I went to the coffee shop, and one of the musicians there was sort of outside having a cigarette, and as I walked by, he said, "Well, we're still here." I said, "Thank you." Yeah, so I'm really pleased that the whole climate is changing, and I mean the musicianship today is just incredible, and particularly with the Tokyo Philharmonic and Yoshimatsu's arrangement. Very, very challenging, but it's equally challenging for the conductor, because the time signatures change all the time.
So, are there any particular aspects in the orchestrated version that you liked most in the performance yesterday? Like you just mentioned the frequent changes in meter, time changes, and he coped with it very well. But
Yes.
maybe there are also some other aspects that you like.
Well, it's quite extraordinary that I mean the feeling I got from hearing the orchestra play it
Right.
is that it actually sounds like it's really meant for Japan. There's various elements in the arrangement that it's like it's not far removed really from Japanese traditional music, as far as I could tell. I'd like to take it one step further now, possibly with Yoshimatsu.
You were kind of talking about the changes that happen to the orchestras of the world. Probably you feel that orchestras of the world has been developing their understanding of popular music and rock music. What do you think?
I think definitely they're increasing their understanding
Right.
of it, and they're realizing that their popularity, the orchestra's popularity,
Right.
enhances itself.
That's right.
I remember the great conductor and composer John Williams, who wrote music for Star Wars and films like that, was one of the first. He was the chief composer of the Boston Pops Orchestra, and he was the first to encourage an orchestra to actually play sort of modern rock.
Right.
And they do the Beethoven stuff probably in the first half, but in the second half he would play like Star Wars, and which of course it was great for the younger generation, because the younger generation of listeners and people attending the concert would sometimes get a little bit bored, with maybe Beethoven's Fifth or something, it's like, and they'd sit through the first half, but then when the second half, and dun, da, da, dun, da, and you got Star Wars coming up, they'd, oh wow, this is great, and so the orchestras at that particular time, before John Williams came in, was almost on a decline, and I'd noticed that with orchestras in England, like way back in the mid-70s, when I recorded my piano concerto. That I could see the concern with orchestras, because they were finding it difficult to finance everything. And,
so probably that's why they have to get concerned with rock music and more, other kinds of music, probably. And probably that helped you work with orchestra in a kind of more cooperative manner.
I was still apprehensive, to work with orchestras even before going to Munich. But thankfully, it was on this particular recording, it was financed by somebody else, whereas before I'd always financed it myself. So, and lost a lot of money, mainly because the orchestra just weren't really interested, you know. But I'm pleased to say that you know, it's thanks to guys like Yoshimatsu and the conductor, Sachio.
Sachio, yeah, Fujioka.
Yes.
Yes.
Who's brave enough to persist and keep the orchestra like you know, wanting to continue, you know. But I could tell I was at rehearsals, and some parts were like really, it was a struggle for the brass players, and so I didn't make too many suggestions at rehearsals, but I did make one suggestion that the second movement should be a bit slower.
Oh, the Stones of Years?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, because the trumpet is actually playing the same solo which I improvised back in when we recorded it in 1971. So the trumpet player is actually playing the same solos I'm doing, and it's not easy for her.
I know, right.
And but the tempo that they were playing it at, it was. I said, "Oh my God, I can't understand how this guy could actually play it." You know, I said, "You know, please drop the tempo." You know,
to make the notes clearer.
Well, and it makes it a bit easier for the player, you know, and I could tell, I could almost hear a sigh of relief, you know.
So how was the result? Was it slow enough for you?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Well, the second movement needs to contrast with the powerful opening,
Right.
and it's a lot more emotional if it's slower.
Well, I think Tarkas is really a great piece, because it was written 40 years ago, and now it's still kind of alive with all kinds of, you know, orchestrated versions. What do you think about it? About this very long life, kind of a long life expectancy of this piece?
Well, I suppose in a way it's almost become a prog or progressive rock national anthem, really. You know. I think it basically defines all of progressive music, you know. Which I've never really, to be quite honest, liked the word progressive or prog. It's quite an ugly word, really. Sorry, I don't wish to. Yeah, I mean, rock is okay. Heavy metal is good, you know. And, country and western, if you like that. Jazz, you know. All those titles to describe a sort of music are good, but when it suddenly comes on there, and what sort of music do you play then? Prog. You know. It's. I remember, like in the 70s, we called it when we were asked what we were playing. We said we didn't really know. We called it contemporary music.
Contemporary music.
Yeah, contemporary music.
Okay.
There were other, in the 60s, what I was doing was called underground music.
Underground, yes.
Psychedelic music.
Right, yes.
All these terms were being used then. And it's kind of ironic that during the early 70s, ELP were referred to as heavy metal. And that's before bands like AC/DC and
that's right.
you know, Def Leppard and all that came along.
Right.
We were known as heavy metal, mainly because of all the big structures that we had. You know, Carl Palmer had a big sort of like, it was all metal, and I think at one point he had an all metal drum kit. You know.
Interesting to learn that ELP was categorized in the same group as things like, you know, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath. Is that what you remember?
I don't really ever think ELP associated themselves along with Led Zeppelin. Now, Led Zeppelin were Led Zeppelin, and ended up with all the women. ELP ended up with all the guys.
You sure?
Well,
Yes,
we did get lucky sometimes, yes.
Yeah, but I know there are many male fans of Euro music. Yeah.
But back in the early 70s, it was quite funny to look, be playing and look out into the audience, and it was all guys, and the women that were there were basically had been dragged along by their boyfriends or their husbands.
Right.
And sat there like, and all the guys going, yeah, and they're like, and the women going. But I mean, of course, when Greg did his ballads and things like that, it was, oh, great, oh, that's so nice, I like that, it's beautiful. Oh, what a lovely song, from the beginning, like that. And then, of course, I come on with knives and smash things up, and like, oh,
Now the Japanese version of your autobiography is out. Is going to be released sometime soon. And but do you have some words to the Japanese readers of your book?
Well, I hope they're not too horrified about it. I hope they still like me after they finish reading it. So, I mean, but it's an honest account of, life on the road. And I think if you were to write it any other way, I'd be lying. So it's truthful. And the difficult thing is when you are that truthful, you don't really want to involve other people's names. So. In some cases, I've had to change the names around, so in case of being sued.
Many of the readers of your book are probably musicians or would-be musicians or would-be superstars. I don't know. Do you have any advice to those younger keyboardists?
Well, pretty much learn the basics. I mean, that's very important. And of course, reading music makes it does make it a lot easier to get your point across. It's quite amazing that I've met some classical players that they don't. They don't understand chord symbols. They can read music, but they rely very much on the music. I think I read somewhere that I think great jazz musicians like Oscar Peterson and who I actually met, guys like that started off actually playing by ear. They developed their ear first, and then learned how to read music after that. And I've heard so many musicians say that that's the best way to learn, is to start by playing by ear, but then learn how to read music. It's often been very frustrating for me to play with other musicians and they don't read. You really have to sort of go over it one note at a time, and they find their own way of writing the music down. That's
right. So you like them to listen to music first.
Well, just play whatever you want,
Right.
But, whatever you try and copy from listening to a record. If there's certain records you like, try and learn how to, what chords they are, and then learn the chord sequence, and then actually buy the music and see how to, it's quite amazing. Some, I used to do that myself. I probably still do sometimes. Go, oh yeah, I know how it goes, but it's not quite like, I wonder what the chords are. Then you go out and you find the music to it and you take it back, put it on. I see, yes, it's a very useful tool to have. It can save some time, Good Lord, I think I'm wearing the same shirt.
Oh really? That's cool. That's right.
How about that? Look, yes, it does look. Looks like I'm wearing the same shirt as And but it has been laundered, it has been washed. So since this photo was taken, so yes, there's some really wonderful things in it. I can't understand it, but I've got a vague idea how it goes. And some wonderful photographs in here in the middle, which you'll see. As that's my father in the army. That's me as a cowboy. Oh, yes, very early pictures. But you'll have to buy the book. There it is. It's quite thick, and you'll find it very entertaining read. I'm sure you will. In your shops now, folks. In your shops now. Oh, that way. Yes, in your shops now. Sorry, I forgot. Yes, it goes for. This one seems to be going for 2,800 or something. I don't know.